the basis of the study was like, if you give someone a velocity target, it creates a greater stimulus than just telling them to move it as fast as possible. So just what you're saying, like you have a dynamic effort day where you're like, oh, I'm going to move this as fast as possible. You will move it faster if you attach something to it that tells you how fast you're actually moving it.
This week on the Yoakum Strength Podcast, Austin talks with Wil Fleming. Wil is a longtime strength coach and former thrower who specializes in velocity-based training. Throughout the episode, he talks about his origins into VBT, how he currently uses it for his athletes, and what are some of the most important metrics to be looking at while training and programming. If you are interested in velocity-based training, this is an episode for you. As always, thank you for listening and enjoy the episode.
Before we dive into today's episode, I want to tell you about the Yoakum Strength Insider. The Insider is our online training platform that takes everything we talk about on this podcast, better movement, smarter training, and actually enjoying the process, and turns it into something you can live and breathe. Our goal is simple. Create better movers who feel stronger, more capable, and more confident in their bodies. We do that through a holistic approach that includes everything from sprinting and lifting to mobility and spinal movements. Inside the Insider, we run several distinct programs: Building Better Movers for foundational athletic development, a dedicated Olympic lifting program, the Get Yoked series for pushing strength and physique, and Washed Up Movers for lifters who want to keep training hard without beating themselves into the ground. We also offer focused options like a vertical jump program and at-home training, so you're never forced into a one-size-fits-all plan. You're not just getting a program, you're getting full access to our app with video demos, progress tracking, a community Discord, and direct communication with a Yoakum Strength coach. Plus our 30-page nutrition and lifestyle guideline covering how we eat, train, and build habits with our athletes. If you want to make training fun again, use code podcast25 at checkout for 25% off your first program. Hope to see you there. Boom. All right, well, Coach, welcome to the podcast. I'm excited to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, I was telling you about my little dive into the VBT world and how it led to you. So I was reading Dr. Brian Mann's book. We just had him on the podcast a couple weeks ago. And I was really interested in VBT for the Olympic lifts. I'm on the quest to clean 405 right now. I'm like, this seems like something super cool that I haven't done and like a fun way to gamify the training aspect of it. And I was reading Brian Mann's book and there's like awesome stuff. And then it gets to the Olympic lifting part. I'm like, oh, I'm chomping at the bit. This is the part that I got to. And he was like, basically like, yeah, go read Wil Fleming's book on this. And I was like, oh man. So then I got your book on this and did the whole dive again. And it's just been an awesome kind of journey into the velocity-based training world, not just for athletics, but also for like the weightlifting world and the Olympic lifting world. And I'm super excited to kind of dive into a lot of these things with you. But my first question is like, how did you start hooking up the VBT to your Olympic lifts? Like what was the process there? And how did you go through the process of deciphering the information that you get from these like VBTs with the Oli lifts? Because dude, when you go through like, when you do bench squat deadlift, it's the cleanest numbers ever. It's like a little average, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It gives you some range of motion, but it's like, all right, that's 0.4, easy. 0.3, easy. All these numbers are consistent. The first time I hooked these up to an Oli lift before I had read your book and I was like trying to figure this out, I was trying to do it myself. I hooked it up. I got like 7 different numbers on tab. I was like, what am I looking
What is
at here?
what?
Like,
Yeah.
what is what? So what was that process like for you? How'd you get interested in it originally? And then how's it been going?
Yeah, so yeah, we'll go way back. And it's kind of full circle. You said like you said you heard about me from Brian Mann's book, and Brian Mann's book was like my kind of like catalyst to write a book about it because I wanted more info about Olympic lifts and stuff like that. And he kind of briefly touches on it. And I was like, well, let me dive into this. But if I go way, way, way back, I was a college thrower, and I'm not super big. I'm 5'11". I was 210 pounds or
What
something
did you
like that in
throw?
college. I threw the hammer.
I was
Dude,
a
I
hammer
came in as
thrower
like a
too.
shot putter.
Oh yeah.
Were you really?
Yeah, yep.
Where'd you throw?
St. Thomas. It's
Okay,
like
cool. Like one of the Minnesota,
yep,
like
yep, yep,
really good schools. Yeah, yeah,
yep.
yeah. So I threw at Indiana, and I picked it up. Did you pick it up late?
Super. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, I was playing football at St. Thomas, and the defensive lineman, he was a senior, way bigger than me. He's like, "You're coming to track practice today," and I was like, "What?" And like he had me try to throw a shot, but I was only a 50-foot shot putter in high school, so it's like the transition to the 16-pounder, dude,
Oh,
just
it's
bodied me.
miserable.
But
Yeah,
I picked up the weight. And I was like, dude, this is cool. This is
yeah,
fun. So like that was really my addiction was was throwing the weight for the first time, and then they had me throw the hammer. But yeah, I loved it,
yeah,
dude. I got
yeah.
all in.
So same, man. I was a shot putter. I was pretty good in high school. My brother was a Big Ten champion in the shot, but he's a lot bigger than me. But so I kind of came into it. I was a hammer thrower in college, and the best schools for throwing in the Big Ten when I was there was Iowa and Minnesota was pretty good actually, but Iowa was really good, and then Indiana, where I was, and we hosted indoor Big Tens one year, and I was red-shirted that year, and so like that indoor season, so I was just like hanging out in the weight room while all the teams would come in and just kind of watch. Like my session would go long, I'd see who's coming in, and Iowa walks in, and they like go to lift, and I'm like, I'm gonna see what Iowa does, and they hook up something to the bar, right? And I go over and like ask, and I find out it was a tendo that they had imported from the Czech Republic, and they were measuring everything, and so I was like, oh shoot, that like just immediately, like if you see velocity-based training for the first time and you've lifted for any period of time, and particularly if you lift to be athletic, right? You're like, well, that makes sense, right? Like how athletic am I? Like we did this that, in college we would this is unquantifiable thing. Like I squatted 600 pounds in college. And then it was like, well, you don't need to squat 650. Let's try to squat 500 faster or 450 faster. But we didn't have any way to quantify it. So this is like my senior year of college, and I see this. We can't buy one. It's 2,500 bucks. The budget's done. But I see that this is like going on. And so ever since then, I was like, I got to get my hands on a tendo. And so I was always like saving up for a tendo. I got a used tendo from somebody who just said they weren't using it. And I was using that tendo unit for a while. And so I was just hooking it up to everything.
And
Just like
this
you,
was
it
in
was like,
college when you were still a thrower.
no, this is post
Oh,
college.
this
So
is
I'm done with
post. I was
college.
gonna say that's badass. You're like you
Yeah,
just
so I'm
bring in
done
your
with
own
college.
tendo to the gym
Yeah,
with
so
it.
I'm like
Sick.
done with college. I'm still throwing like post collegiately and stuff like that, but I like find a used tendo,
Yeah.
and so I was like getting ready for the Olympic trials in 2008. And so, anyways, I'm just like just seeing, and I have no clue, and I don't even think Dr. Mann had written his book yet. I mean, I don't think that came along until the 2010, 12, something like that range, because this is like 2006 to 2010. So it's after that. Then I have a gym. I'm training people, and so I would like bring it out. I'd like measure stuff. So I just always had stuff. And then I was like hooking it up to Olympic lifts. And I had the one that had the mat that you could drop and it wouldn't hit the unit and stuff like that. So I was like using it for my Olympic lifts, but just trying to figure out numbers. And so I like start looking at, I think Dr. Mann was the one who said use peak velocity for this. So I started using peak velocity for my Olympic lifts. And the thing, the thing I go into is Olympic lifts, squat, bench, deadlift, mean velocity, right? An Olympic lift has an intentionally slow phase in the first pull because it's so important to keep it in position. So if you measure mean velocity, it's going to be like kind of intentionally lower. And if you try to increase mean velocity, you'll probably rip the bar off the ground. So it's going to get you in a bad position anyways. So what you're really measuring on peak velocity is that like impulse at the very top where you're trying to have a like flight time where you're trying to like finish the lift. So yeah, so I started, dialing into peak velocity as this thing, and like tracking it on everything, and like figuring out what made it go up, what was worthwhile. You kind of find out with Olympic lifts really quickly that you have your own zones because they're highly impacted by height and like the length of the pole and stuff like that. So you kind of have to get your own velocity profile for Olympic lifts, whereas, squat, bench, deadlift kind of seem to have these universal parameters, right? You're not gonna make a squat. You're probably not gonna make a squat under 0.25 meters per second. You might be able to a little bit, but usually you're gonna try and stay above that and stay there. Whereas Olympic lifts, you got to dial into really particular things. So yeah, that was kind of that was the basis of it. I thought, this is 2006 or seven that I see this for the first time, and then get the used tendo start going, and then the kind of big thing that was really cool was right around that time, 2015, 16. Um, there was a company called Open Barbell, and Open Barbell started making this like $300 VBT, like and there's multiple different types of VBT units. There's the one I always default to and have is the LPT unit, which is the wire to a bar like an OVR or whatever. And but this dude made an open barbell, and he was selling it really cheap. And you had to get on a wait list and make like 20 of them at a time and then send them out. And so I got an open barbell, and that company became Rep One. And so that guy started Rep One, but they started getting cheap. And then we had, OVR was there, and Vitruve was like, they're making all these cheaper ones and all that kind of stuff. And so the technology is just way more accessible now. So that was like kind of the impetus to write this book that like, hey, we have this variable, and that's what I figured out it was. It's not like anything. It's just another variable that if you manipulate this variable, it seemingly in like the strength coach's mind, athlete's mind is like to me, like as I was thinking about it was this is the best variable if I want to be athletic. Like this is a variable I really should be thinking about is how fast it is because everybody is like, oh, we're gonna do you if you don't train in velocity like measuring it, you're still talking about velocity if you're a strength coach. You're like, hey, we'll do 6 to 8 reps. If eight's starting to get heavy, we'll go down in weight. Or we'll if eight is easy, we're gonna go up in weight. Well, how do you know that eight is easy? Well, it's a speed at which it's done. So now we just can like actually quantify that. So that was the whole reason behind it was like it just totally made sense when I was looking at it. And then like that's what I'm after. And I was always an Olympic lifter. I started Olympic lifting when I was 15. And so moving weight fast was always what I thought made people the most athletic, like explosive, fast, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, that long story to get to, yeah, I wrote a book about it, about the weightlifting side of stuff.
Dude, usually there's got to be a long story to write a book about it. So
Yeah.
that's that's perfect. When you were first getting these numbers, what were you comparing those numbers to? When you were saying like if it's before even like Brian Mann, like you were getting a bunch of this data, it was like, how were you making sense of that data? Were you just trying to like increase the own speed that you had, or were you trying to like compare it to some old Soviet text? Like, well, what were
Yeah,
you doing with those
there
original
was a
original
Soviet
datas?
text. Yeah, there's a Soviet text actually. That was maybe the first place I saw it, and it was I think in one of they have like the main Soviet text was uh, um, like managing the training of a weightlifter, and then there's a program for long-term weightlifting development and a system for and all that kind of stuff. But one of a handful of them that like they're this is like Sportivny Press, the guy in Michigan who was like doing all the translations. One of them had like a compendium of articles that were like published in the Soviet Union, and there was one from like 1980 something, and they did all high speed motion cameras, like and they like listed the velocity of lifts for them to be complete, right? So it was like a jerk, 1.7 meters per second, a snatch, 2.0 meters per second, these very round numbers. So that was the very first thing that I saw that had like hard data. And you figure out that that's peak velocity, right? So it was like, oh, I'm going to go for these peak velocity numbers. So that's what I based it off of. And theirs was also based on height. So that was the first time I decided, okay, we got to figure out like mine are going to be less than this kid who's like 6'2" that I'm coaching, right? Like I'm 5'11", I have short arms, so my numbers will be less than. And so they had them categorized like down to people who are like 5 feet tall, right? So like the Naeem Suleimanoglu kind of thing, and like so they had all those. So that was like I would just go off of that. Like once I found that, I started going from there, and then man gives you a lot more like how to do it and whatnot, and particularly how to put it into a system, right? Like how to train. And so just using that was what I was collecting. And I wish I know it's over in my bookshelf someplace over here. But yeah, it was one of the compendium of all these different articles from a year. And they had them like listed as the height, like and the funny thing about the jerk I noticed was like it's pretty much like 1.7 meters per second peak velocity to make it a completed lift because no matter how long your arms are, the jerk isn't that long, right? But like the snatch would be like 2.1 or 2.0 or 1.9. And so I was just going off of that kind of stuff and seeing if I could hit those numbers. And doing the first thing you do is like, okay, if I hit this number, I go up. I hit this number, go up. When does it fall apart? That kind of stuff. So, and then the question you never had was, or you never had answered was like, what if it has like a really big speed, but I still missed it, And it's like, oh, your technique's off. Like, that was the other one. It's like, okay, the strength that's like an easy way to get a piece of information that you can't quantify without velocity is like, oh, you missed it, but you had the speed. Well, obviously you put it in the wrong place, you did something incorrect or applied your force in the wrong way.
Oh, dude, don't you worry. I got a lot of questions about that one. They're gonna dive deep into that one because there's a lot of the numbers where it's like I've been implementing a lot of your speed buster days and a lot of my just VBT days in general with the max lifts and what I've realized is almost like my VBT has gone up, and I'm moving all of my PRs at higher velocities than like what my MVT was supposed to be, like my minimum velocity threshold is supposed to be. But I couldn't do that before. It was like before, let's say I was moving my clean at like right around what my it's supposed to be like a 1.65 or whatever. Now I'm moving 380 at like a 1.7.
Are you
It's wild.
serious?
But yeah. So I'll dive into that. But I want to ask because there's a lot of things I've gone through, like journey wise, where in college or like looking at other people's training, I'm like, that's a fucking awesome idea. It's amazing. I dive deep into it and I find out it's really not that awesome. You went down this rabbit hole with MVT and velocity based training, and you were like, this is going to be awesome. And then it actually was awesome, right? Like, what was the thing that got you hooked to, like, okay, there's actually something here. It's not just like eye candy. It's not just something, like, did you start throwing farther? Did you start jumping higher? Like, what were the things where you're like, oh man, this is actually like, not only does it make sense, but it works. Like, I think a lot of times we have things in our field that like, they kind of make sense on paper. They sound great theoretically, and then you implement them like, oh man, that was kind of sloppy. But like obviously this worked for you to be able to like keep it in your program and keep ripping with it.
Yeah. So, I think, as a strength coach, I think most good strength coaches try stuff on themselves first, right? So I was trying, I was like, yeah, this works. Like this really works. And it was when I like started, I'm going to throw it on with this, like into this athlete's program. And like, oh shoot, they just like actually continuously PR'd for 12 straight weeks. You know what I mean? It's like, because, number one with this is velocity based training is the best form of auto regulation. Like I think we all know that, right? That like if you can auto regulate and like pick the right load on a given day, that's like actually what you're doing. If you wrote with percentages, your guess is this is the right intensity to get the desired result that I want, right? Like, and I tell everybody, it's like always a guess. If I say I want you to do 80%, that's my guess of that, like what would bring that about. We don't really know. We have enough, like, but is that the right thing for you that day? And is 80% actually 80% on that day? And velocity-based training, like it is the best way to auto-regulate. So when I like was throwing it with onto like programs for like some athletes, and it's like, wait, yeah, it's 12 straight weeks of PRs, and they like just like blew through like plateaus and stuff like that. And then what was like crazy was I wrote this book at the end of 2020, but early in 2020 when like COVID happened. I like, I took all my equipment, gave it to all my people, and I didn't see it. I just didn't see them, like, because we were not training together. We were like, they were in their garage or whatever, and I gave like, I had like 5 rep like velocity device. I had some tendos, I had every kind, right? I had collected them. I sent them all out with my people, and say, hey, these are what you're training to. Like these are the numbers you have to hit, and they like constantly hit like once I gave them that, it was like they didn't even need a coach. It was like they were hitting the numbers every day, and it was like constant. It was the best like training people had. And I was like, that's kind of crazy, like that's in like totally insane that we can do that. So that was when I was like, that's the confirmation that this is super powerful, and I should try to like put this together for other people to read about, because this isn't like BS.
Dude, I'm noticing the same thing on my VBT program right now. So that's very everything you're saying. I'm like kind of living through and going through, which is fun. But one of the things that you
Austin,
meant
can I can I can I jump up real quick? I have a package being delivered that I have to sign
oh
for.
yeah.
Is that okay?
You're
I'm so
good. Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
This is
No, you're so
ridiculous, but
good.
I'm sorry. All right, hold on. What's happening? Thank you very much. That was like the worst timing in the world.
Did you get a new VPT device in the mail?
No, I had to get a new iPhone, and when AT&T sends it, you have to sign for it, or else like
Yeah.
you can't have it. And I tried to put it. Anyways, the only window they gave me was today before 8 p.m. and it was like, oh cool, yeah, I got nothing to do.
Dude, you're so good. Right before I have my car in my shop right now, and right before you hopped on, they called me and I had to approve something for that. I'm like, oh thank God that happened right now,
That happened
not
right now.
not
Yeah,
during the podcast. But
yeah.
um
Okay.
But yeah, ready to roll here.
All right, sorry.
One of the things that I liked about your program and the thing that you were talking about is like a lot of the speed buster days, and it made me think of like a West Side dynamic effort day, right? And the thing that I was realizing is you can put 65% on a bar, and people think they're doing like, let's say the old conjugate, like dynamic effort day, you do 65 to 75%. So you put some bands on there, you're trying to move it fast, and you're hitting a dynamic effort day. Until I hooked up the VBT, I have never done actual dynamic effort day with what I was supposed to do. Like when I was moving that bar for the first time, trying to stay in my speed zones, I was like, I'm not even fucking close. I am not even close to getting the stimulus that I'm supposed to be getting out of these days. And like how hard it was for me, and it's like as like a force dominant athlete to get into those zones, and like how fatiguing 65 to 75% turned into for those first couple weeks. It was such an eye-opening experience of you think you're doing one thing and you're really not training the thing that you think you're training. And once I started to train that stuff, it was wild how much low hanging fruit was there, how much faster the bar was moving, how much higher my jumps were after that. I'm like, oh yeah, of course you're actually finally going into that speed zone. And I thought that was like such a cool experience of like you're actually getting the stimulus that you want done that day, not just like percentage wise, like moving the weight, the like you're moving it fast. Like you were saying, like the coach's eye, and it's cool. I think it's cool to see the coach's eye and like hear that coaches had these philosophies before a VBT was a thing, before we had the OVRs everywhere. Like it was cool that they're like, yeah, you want to move this fast, like it makes sense inherently. But it's like, are you actually? And now we have a piece of data that's telling us yes or no. And I think a lot of people would be amazed once you hook an OVR up to show that you're not actually going in those zones that you think you're going in.
Yeah, I mean, there's like a statement. One thing that I ran into is like I was talking to people about it, you know, beforehand, and this one thing is like, well, I tell everybody, they're like, of course, I love it. Like train fast, be fast. That's one, like that's I believe that kind of thing. You want to train with like maximum concentric velocity to like be faster and stuff like I agree with that. But they'll say, of course, I tell them to move it the fastest possible, right? And there was one of the studies, and I need to I wish I could pull it up off my top of my head, but the basis of the study was like if you give someone a velocity target, it creates a greater stimulus than just telling them to move it as fast as possible. So just what you're saying, like you have a dynamic effort day where you're like, oh, I'm going to move this as fast as possible. You will move it faster if you attach something to it that tells you how fast you're actually moving it. So like, it is this ultimate external cue, right? If you talk about like coaching athletes, and one of the cues we want is like using external cues from all that research on how to coach, like not internal cues. We want external results-based cues, and velocity is this ultimate results-based external cue. The cool thing is like as technology has come about, imagine like back in the day, you have this Tendo. The unit is like the just a square. You can't even like see it any place. Like it gives you go after the set, and you said, yeah, I was, but now like you can get they have audible tones so you hit the right velocity, or you can put it up on a screen, or you can have it on your phone and all this kind of stuff. And so like even interset, like in intraset, inside the set, if you know that you need to go faster on the next rep, you will go faster if you have that information. So it's like um being able to measure the thing that you want is like such a game changer, right? Such a game changer. I mean, I'm totally in agreement. Like as soon as you find out, wait, I wasn't going as fast as I thought I was. It's just like sprinting, like you
Yeah,
gotta
that's true.
measure how
Yep.
fast you sprint, right? Like how do you know if you're actually fast and if you don't test it,
A lot of
like
guys say they run a 4.4.
yeah, you put the timers out,
They
man.
put
Like
those timers up.
every time we sprint with like a laser timer, right? Like I want every rep, I know, like let me know. So like let me measure the thing that I want to know about. And to me, moving like goes back to that very first thing is like I'd rather move X 100 pounds fast than go for a max that gets pretty slow. You know what I mean? Like yeah, I love maxing. Like maxing out's fun. Like at some point, I'm not saying I'm against that, but like I think for the training stimulus, yeah, I want to go after that.
So can you run me through how you program, and I'll run you through like my ideas and what I've been working with, and maybe you can poke holes in it or just see what the differences are, but how you program for Olympic lifts specifically with the VBT, because a lot of guys on the podcast that have been Olympic lifting coaches, they talk about how it sometimes can mess up your technique, or how you can like they don't want the focus of speed on the bar. If they're weightlifters, they want the focus of like the technique and keeping it together. And the way that I've been building this out, and I would love to hear your thought processes on this, is basically taking my minimal velocity threshold, taking a percentage, and I'm treating that like my 1 rep max, right? Like, so that's
Yeah.
100%. And then I take a percentage of that. So on Mondays, it's like 90% of my minimal velocity threshold is my snatch zone. I got to stay above the 90%. Let's say on a speed buster day. So Monday, Wednesday, Fridays are like the heavier days of the program where we're hitting either like 85 to 92-ish%. Friday's a little bit heavier where we're kind of like pushing a new, like just a heavy Friday type meathead weightlifting day, just using the MVP to see where we're tracking there. And then Tuesday, Thursday, I've been adopting your speed buster days where we've been taking 65 to 75% of our snatches and then trying to stay within it of the minimum velocity threshold and trying to stay within those zones. And I've had these things where it's like, again, like I was telling you, where, and again, I think a lot of this is just the individual technique and the variance in the technique, but it's almost like it's impossible for me to now reach what was my old minimum velocity threshold. It's like I'm cleaning 20 pounds more than I was at the start of this program at like, it's not even close. So it's like, I'm thinking, I don't know how to describe this to you, but it's like, I'm trying to stay in this 90% zone, but I can't even get to that slow of a bar speed anymore of what I was doing before. So it's like, it's kind of messing up. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm overloading or not, because it's like, that was a new PR and I was supposed to be at 90% of that. And I can't even get close to that. Like, I can't even on my misses. It's not even getting close to the actual minimum velocity threshold that I had before, but I don't feel beat up. I'm not like, it's the best I've felt on a program. So I was like, I've been super interested in like how you actually do this and like what that process is, why it's like really hard for me to get the minimum velocity threshold now compared to like the start of the program, and like what you do with that data. Like, how do you do it with weightlifting?
Yeah, perfect. So I'm going to come back to your specific thing, like issue right now. I'm going to come back to that at the end of
Perfect.
this. I want to answer the question of like, what do I do programming wise? And so it'd still be really similar. For let's say I have just a general athlete. Yeah, we're on velocity all the time, right? Like we're doing hang cleans. I got like some tall, skinny, like middle school basketball players or high school basketball players. You're doing hang cleans above 2 meters a second, right? Catching it pretty high still, like 2.1, 2.2 or whatever. And I'm trying to keep them at this power height, right? And they're gonna snap when we're muscle snatching over 3 meters a second all the time. Like like one thing that is my non-negotiable is all my athletes muscle snatch based on the velocity-based training stuff. Um,
Is that just
like
because it's so much more consistent?
dude, it's like, well, it's super consistent, it's super fast. Um, you know, I was measuring everything for the longest time, and like there's the Tendo had power output like as like a wattage, and I think a lot of systems do, and there's some math to get it done, so some don't, but some do. But the highest wattage I had was I did a 165 kilo like power clean that kind of shook me down. Like, I couldn't turn on the brakes, but it was high enough to be a power clean. And I had, I think it was 4,700 watts or something like that. And the only thing that equated that was a 70 kilo muscle snatch at 3.2 meters per second. Right. So it's like, so as an athlete, like if I can get you to a 70 kilo muscle snatch, you are moving weight, right? And I can get a lot more athletes to a 70 kilo muscle snatch than I can get to a 165 kilo power clean. You know what I mean? So like, and just think about the impact. If I think about the impact on like this high school kid who's going to go play a football game or something, I could probably get you muscle snatching 70 kilos every week or 60 kilos or 50 kilos, some big number for you. And like 50% of your snatch or something. If I can get you muscle snatching that, you're going to have this massive power output, this massive stimulus on that, but it's not going to actually be that impactful to your body. So like I'm like king muscle snatch. If you can, like if somebody, people ask, I've been on podcasts where like, oh, if I were to have my athletes do one lift, what would it be? A muscle snatch. That's it. Like, that's my thing. If you're going to do one Olympic lift, that's the one you're going to do for an athlete. Cause you're going to like just blast stuff. And it was like we actually went down this road. Man, I'm way off on what you asked me,
No, you
but
keep going. This is awesome. This is awesome.
we went down this road where we like actually put together a study to use muscle snatch as like the predictor of daily performance, like muscle snatch bar speed for weightlifters or like as a proxy to vertical jump, right? Because vertical jump has been shown to like demonstrate your performance every day. Your muscle snatch bar speed did a very similar thing, right? It wasn't better or anything like that. It was actually the same as vertical jump, so whichever you wanted to do, but it was the same. Like they could both, and we did, we had 25 people in the study and all that kind of stuff. We tested it, and anyways, it was we were like I love the muscle snatch, right? So with athletes, I'm measuring it, right? Like, so I'm gonna figure out bar speed. We're gonna have an MVT. Usually it's based on height. We don't go to a ton of 1 rep max with my like sports performance kids, and I'm almost all kids, like 13 to 16 or 17 right now. And but we're hang cleaning, we're muscle snatching, we're figuring out the bar speed. We're going up until you hit that number. Now, with my real Olympic lifters, sometimes we do get pushback from like Olympic lifting coaches where they're like, well, it's, technique and all that kind of stuff. I don't think they like get it, like honestly, I think that they haven't done enough with this to understand like what it means and also know that like the whole point is it's another coach in the room. That's it. Like it's another coach in the room. If you can like have another coach who is really good at spotting one thing, like if this guy was the best at spotting like spinal alignment, right? And you're like, well, hey, what's that guy's spine look like? You'd be like, yeah, I'd use that. Like if you had this dude who was like, oh, I know exactly why that guy is like crooked or they have this imbalance. You would listen to that coach. Well, bar speed is a coach. Like you put some up, that bar speed is going to give you a piece of information. Is it every piece of information? No. Like so. Yes, there are other things in play when you Olympic lift. There's a ton of technique, and you can do things to make your bar speed go up that make your technique kind of fall off. You know what I mean? But you can also do things that most things you do that make your bar speed fall like there most things that you do that make bar speed go down are bad, right? So like okay, why'd that go down? Well, you're getting behind the bar really early and pulling back. So you got a bunch of horizontal velocity. So the bar dies or something like that. You might spot that in the ROM, like when you get range of motion on your OVR, that's telling you're not pulling it as high. You have a high bar speed, but you didn't pull it as high, so because the bar went out, So it's like taking another piece. You can take if you have bar speed, it's a great variable. It's a great piece of information. But I think that people like have heard or can see that people will like rip back on the bar and it'll still show some like bar speed because the ones with a tether, like the LPT units, they measure like the total distance that string is going. So if you send it out at an angle, like it's also measuring that, right? So yes, you could make it look like it's going crazy up, like the speed is going up, but in fact, it's not really helping you. But most of the time, like if you do something that makes your bar speed drop, that's like a bad technical thing. So it gives you a piece of information, but you have to use it enough, right? You have to use it enough to know. And so the big thing now, like, so, I wrote this in 2020, the thing that's really important, like useful now is using bar speed with something like a bar tracking kind of thing, right? Like there's some, eNode came out with something recently that like attaches to the Eleiko bar. It's just an end cap. It's pretty cool. And it'll give you like up to the instant like bar path. And the thing that will change everything you do about this, like the piece of information that I didn't have when I wrote the book, but I have now pretty easily, is like a graph of the velocity, right? So if you look at, so the thing that I look at now, the change that I've made is I still track velocity. I'm still asking you to put that on. We're going to snatch up to like something heavy and we're going to do this. I'm going to look at like what the graph of velocity looks like. And so what that would look like is, off the floor or the force, like velocity or force, depending. Either one of those graphs will have like some markers. So they'll spike off the floor because like force will spike off the floor. Velocity will start rising. But if you like, the kind of deadly sin in weightlifting to me is getting your shoulders behind the bar, right? Because if I get behind the bar, if you just think about that, all I can do is lean back more and I'm going to have like horizontal motion on the bar. If I like keep my shoulders on top of the bar, and I can go up, right? I can jump. I mean, honestly, like the very first thing I was ever taught about weightlifting, and it's like gets a bad rap, is like it's a jump. To jump and shrug, right? That was like a big thing for a long time. I mean, jump and shrug, and people like poo-poo that, and they're like, "Oh, it's actually this." And if you watch the Chinese, it's this, and it's like they're just jumping, man. Like they just have a bunch of weight. And like, and yes, there's outliers of technique. There's this Iranian like super heavyweight, and the Iranian like technique is to actually leverage themselves against the bar, and they lean back, and they have this dude who can clean and jerk 275 kilos and stuff. So like, he's like 22. He's insane. If you look him up, and I can't remember his name, but he's like this young super heavyweight, and he's probably the strongest guy to ever live in the clean and jerk. Like it's insane. He's like 22 in training. He's done 275. He's like stronger than Lasha Talahadzi. It's like, and their technique is weird, but they actually leverage themselves against the bar. But most of us, we're trying to like turn it into a jump. Let's go vertical. Let's push down on the ground and launch ourselves up. And so if you do that, this velocity curve that is created, and you can start seeing it, you could use like, there's bar tracking apps that are free that you can put like with the lift. Like if you look at your bar speed, plus you look at this, you can put it together. There's things that are coming out. They'll show you the whole graph along with your speed. We have like a biomechanics person with USA Weightlifting we can send them the lifts, and we'll have the results in 5 minutes. But like the new one that Aleko put out is like instant. Like it's super cool. I think it'll change. I'm working hard to work with that like as a system, and because I think it'll change everything. Like if you have all of that information, but that velocity curve, if you match your peak velocities up with the velocity curve, then you'll see if that like velocity, and that's what I would say with you, right? Like what you would need to do is probably match up your lift with like a velocity and force curve, and see if like you're getting like some air, like a little bit of extra information, right? Like what's that verticality like at the top, and how does that how is that going into the figure that you're getting? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
that's how you kind of tweak that last bit, where you're like, you also could just be like, faster like that. That's also true. And so like, if you're not feeling beat up, you say I'm hitting like 380 at like higher speeds than you used to, right? Or higher than you used to, like your maxes used
Dude,
to be. I
my
mean,
380 is moving faster than my 350 was before I started this program. And I
yeah,
really I do attribute a lot of it to those speed buster days, just like not
yeah,
having
you're just,
any exposure to bar velocity. I was wondering if that was like
yeah,
a
I think so.
common thing or
You're
what that
also like
is.
just, you're recruiting like way better, right? You're just like recruiting that, and putting that in there, like, I have watched your lifts, but you always have like, you're the front left angle. So I have like seen your lifts on Instagram, but I haven't seen them like from any other angle. So I can't say like technically what, if there's something that I feel like, but it could, yeah, you just could be moving faster. And if you're like not beat up, then that's the whole point. You know what I mean? So it's like, cool. Yeah. It's like, let's keep riding this wave.
That's what
Like
I
I
mean.
can't
That's
even
why I
get to
haven't pushed
that.
back on like any of it
Yeah,
too
I
far
can't.
because I'm like, dude, I
Yeah.
do not like when I was running percentage based programs. It's like I was just like, I know there's like auto regulation that comes into percentage based programs, but I was like trying to go through the process of like actually running other people's programs to a T. Like they said 80%, we're doing 80%. They said 90% today, we're doing 90% today. And this, it's just like, it feels like I can keep PRing and I keep
Yes.
feeling better and I keep moving the bar faster. And I was like, what in the world is happening? Like I should feel destroyed from that. And I really just don't. Like it's kind of wild.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think, that it really is a point. There's my favorite thing when people talk about that is like percentage base. I think it was like a Jovanovich study. He like put out that was like percentages like actually vary like 18% on a day-to-day basis, right? And everybody who's ever lifted knows that, right? Like if you've lifted, it's like, oh, it's 80%. Oh my gosh, this feels like 98%, right? Or this feels like nothing today. And everybody's ever lifted, if you're smart, you make an adjustment on the day, right? But if you're like, so I have athletes, it's like, I'm going to follow this to a T. I'm not going to deviate, right? And it's like, but, or, then you switch into RPE, right? And then like, you find out that some athletes have no ability to like pay attention to their body. They're like, yep, yeah, that was an 8. It was like, you failed. That's definitely not an 8. Like, you actually fit. No, I had more. Yeah, it was fine. Give me more. That was an 8. No, it wasn't. So like, Yeah, I mean, just like it's like it is to me. If you have the means within your like budget wise, which I think is like a huge thing, is like if you can have them, they're so cheap now. Like, how much is an OVR now? I mean, they're not.
$300.
Yeah, right. Like, I mean, I'm talking like when I found a Tendo, I got one that was very used for $900, right?
Yeah.
Like, and it was like a new 2,500 bucks, And so it's like, and the OVRs and all these like small ones they're verified against like like high speed motion cameras and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, if you have the means and like the setup to do it, like, yeah, do it. You got to do it.
So what's your thought process? And you mentioned this where you're missing weights at a bar speed that you should be able to hit them on. And the way that I've been doing it, I've been thinking about the same way. I'm like, okay, that's got to be a technical, like obviously a technical thing because I have my minimum velocity threshold to be able to get this up. Like this should be good. And a lot of times it's been even like it's been faster. I'm like, this should be crushed. When you're trying to, let's say, auto-regulate, because this is the thing again, the auto-regulation piece, it's almost like to me, it like auto-regulates your technique. But then I don't know how to look at it in a way of like auto-regulating the wear and tear or the stimulus that you're trying to get done that day. Because it's like, okay, if you're missing that, if that's a percentage-based program, that you would say you're missing 100%, right? Or you're maxing out, like this 1 rep max. But it's like my bar speed is showing that this is actually like 90% of what I'm supposed to do. Like, what's your thought process there when it's like going through the process of missing? And it's only with ollies because again, like when it gets to the barbell squats and like bench, it's so clean, like it's so simple. It's like, okay, that was a point for, like it's so truthful too. It's like you get to that point three, you're running out of reps to get, man. Like
Yeah.
I have not seen anybody that's squeezing out a bunch more reps once they get to those points. And it's like other than like Will Rattel, who I think has moved stuff at like a point like one, it's crazy like how slow he's able to do weights and like grind them out. But like
I
that,
made my all-time front squat PR was 190 kilos like a couple years ago, and I did it at 0.18 second meters per second because I was like, and I'm like I never had ever gone below point 0.3, but it was like one of those reps where I stopped halfway through and it was just stuck, and I was like I'm not missing, like, and then came up, but that was yeah.
Yeah, we've been
I've
running
only
the
done that
program.
one.
So I started at 5 rep max at I just like to dwindle it down. It was like 5 rep max at point 0.5, 3 rep max at point 0.4, and now we're gonna go like start to work into those 1 reps and see how like slow grinding. But yesterday I overshot and we went into like 0.29, but the 0.29 even felt like decently
Yeah,
crispy.
those actually aren't they're not bad. They're heavy, but
Yeah,
they're not
they're
bad.
not terrible. But yeah, what's your thought process on like the using it for the Olympic lifts to auto-regulate the actual Olympic lifts? Or is it just auto-regulating the technique to where like you're not again, like I haven't felt beat up from these things when I'm missing these things. I just take it as okay, I'm in my zone. I can go get this weight. And typically I do. Like typically a couple reps in, I go and get it, and it's like a good thing. But it's like trying to use these numbers to base off how I'm actually feeling that day and what weight I should actually put on the bar. And then it's like, is it a technique thing today? Is it an actual body thing today? And trying to figure that out. Like how do you do it? Because like if you miss in a
Yeah.
percentage based program again, like that would be okay, you're going too heavy because you're missing. But it's like, okay, my
Yeah.
bar speed showing me that that's not actually the case.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, it's a piece of information. It's like, okay, it's not too heavy, so it must be technical. What do I need to fix, right? So it's like, okay, do I have somebody helping me, right? Hey, did I did it bounce off my hips and get away? Did I like, was I like too far on my toes? Or did the bar not get back in the first pull? So then you start using your eye, right? So I think you actually started to ask this in the previous question. Was like, well, it's so technical, and so with like weightlifting. If one thing that we do a lot, right, is if there's the heavy days are going to be regulated, right, auto regulated, but there are some technique days. It's just like to me, weightlifting to me is also is a much of a sport, right? Sometimes we like you go too far sport or you go too far like strength and conditioning. You know what I mean? So it's like you have to, and so it's like, what are the sport skills that I need, and what are the strength and conditioning skills that I need to be like a really good weightlifter? And so like really good weightlifting coaches are great strength and conditioning coaches for sure, but they're also like really good sport coaches. So it's like, and so we forget sometimes we forget that like we go like and everybody does this, and even the weightlifting, I do this. Oh, it's like all strength and conditioning. Well, your squat number indicates that you're like gonna hit this PR, and it's like, well, I haven't really addressed the top of your pull and the fact that like your hands are getting away or something like that, right? So the only thing for you is like, okay, you might take a day or a day every other week and do like something really dialed in with technique. It's like, okay, let's say it was a snatch. I know you're chasing the clean, but real like for instance to me is like, oh, in the snatch, my bar drifts away at the top. I should do some no contact snatches where I have to like really finish tall and not like leverage myself against the bar because I can't without the bar touching my body, or I need to do just muscle snatches where like we do this thing called a quo muscle snatch where like Kuo Sing Chun from Taiwan has this amazing technique in the snatch, and whenever she muscle snatches and finishes through her toes on balance, right? Like, and like is on her tiptoes when she finishes. And so, maybe you got to find that technical variation that you throw in, and it could still be under speed, right? Like, those are both going to go pretty fast. That could be like your speed buster day for you now could evolve into I need to do like a little bit of a technical variation with speed to change that. So that's when the speed's there, but like the weight gets missed. Yeah, that's like a clear sign I did something wrong, right? Like something is off. So do I go to my phone and look at the video? Do I go to like my training partner? Do I go to my coach? Whatever.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And it's funny that you mentioned that. All of our the thing that has made sense in my head is using those speedbuster days as like a two for one stone, and you like using
Yes.
speedbuster days with a complex of something I need to
Yes.
work on. So then you get the stimulus of the fast bar speed with working on the technical pieces of
Yep.
your lift. And that's been an absolute moneymaker for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
That's cool. When you're working with these things, one of the things that I think is taking it out of just the weightlifting world, if you're working with just athletes, man, it's like the stimulus that you can get in the high velocity movements, because it's like the argument is like the reason people don't use weightlifting with athletics is because it's too technical. And it's like, to me, if you look this VBT up, the stimulus you can get done, either whether it's a muscle snatch or a pull with these numbers, the amount of power work you can get done, I think, is insane. Like, I think it really just eliminates that BS argument of like weightlifting's too technical to get anything out of. I'm like, dude, you could basically do these like almost like a weighted jump, like you were saying, with these bar numbers, with the amount of like wattage that you're getting out of these athletes. It's crazy. Like, I think there's so many cool things you can do, not just in the weightlifting world, staying out of the technical piece, but with athletes to drive up that power like output. And almost like it's not, I don't want to say it's grip and ripping the bar, but it's like you can get these athletes moving that bar fast in simpler variations like the muscle snatch or like a high
Yeah.
pull, and get a ton out of it with these numbers to back it up and have them race these numbers.
Yeah, I mean, if you like hook this stuff up, and I'm not necessarily on the first day, but like if I can get a kid to muscle snatch in like 6 minutes, 5 minutes, like, and I can get them to high pull in three. It's like
Yeah.
as long as they have like the posture to like set their shoulders and brace their midsection, like yeah, we can do a hang muscle snatch or hang high pull pretty fast. And if you've also hooked up a VBT device to those movements, you're like, oh shoot, that's like already moving, right? Like, and so then you're already getting this huge stimulus out, and you all you have to do is like put a bar in their hands. It's like so yeah, I think it's a no-brainer. And then once you hook them up to a VBT device where they're like gamifying it. That's the other thing. It's like if you gamify it and it's like, oh, this is the let's say you got a room full of football players, and 185 and 225 are cool like cleans, and you can get I had like a little high school with 400 students and 30 guys on the football team. I had 18 of them cleaning 225, right? Like in a season, it's like, so you can get a bunch of like high school boys to clean, 225, a bunch of high school girls clean 135, 155, right? And if you can say, hey, who moves it the fastest, right? Who moves it the fastest? Who's like smoking this weight, like, and it's like that, like, I mean, it's like so simple then, and like everybody does it. Honestly, I want to go back to this. I should probably hammer this point home. Most of the things you can do that are good technically make the bar go faster.
Yes.
Like it's like a very small percentage of stuff you can do in weightlifting makes the bar look fast, but is bad technically, right? Like most of the things that make the bar go faster mean you did it better. So it's like, why wouldn't you? If you can measure it, you should measure it. It's like totally a no-brainer to me.
Dude, I've talked about this ad nauseum on the YouTube, but it's like I say it's an auto regulate, like it auto regulates your technique. Because every time I try to grip and rip it and like jump, like just like do like a meathead like pull, it is always slower. Like my
I
body
know,
feels
it really,
faster. It feels like
yeah,
I'm moving my body faster, but like I'm not
yeah,
actually moving that weight any faster. And it's such a cool. It's like, oh, I almost have to like get the feeling of like slowing down the pull and like accelerating the implement. But then you think throwing, softball, baseball. It's like that's what you do in those. It's not about like just swinging your arms as fast as possible. It's like
yeah,
how can you generate the force through the implement that is in your hands in the most efficient pattern and getting the feel of it. And dude, it's such a relatable thing to me in throwing and baseball where it's like it's the same thing. You can have a dude that swings his arms as fast as possible. It's not going to swing the bat faster, right? It's not going
yeah.
to actually produce force through the bat. It's going to be the same thing with the bar where if you just try to jump with like not, I don't know if jump's the best term, but it's like I do this thing like sometimes where I really have a light weight on the bar and I really like try to like move it fast, but it's just my
Yeah.
body moving fast. It's not actually
Yes.
the bar moving
Yes.
fast, and it moves slower, and it tells me it moves slower. And I'm like, okay, this is what I need to dial back in on, and then actually move the bar faster.
There's like one of my very first weightlifting coaches, I was super lucky, was an Olympian in 1992, and he said like there's short and quick or long and fast, right? And we need this
Yes.
long and fast. And like in the last couple of years, I've started teaching biomechanics at a local community college, and that's like impulse, right? If you like thinking about impulse is like that total area under the force curve. So if I can make that long too, right? That's like going to peak that and I'm going to get more of that overall impulse. And impulse is what like athletes have to do, like apply strong contact into the ground that creates like really high peaks, but or like drive through it, that big impulse. And if you have that big impulse, that's a good technique usually, right? Like those short, quick things where you're trying to move fast, like that doesn't do it, like,
It does not
and
work, and
and
it
if
humbles
you
you.
see people like you see this a bunch with throwers, which I always feel bad about because I always think throwers are every thrower. I've seen some stupid stuff from like throwers in terms of strength in my life, but like in saying like these numbers, like people you wouldn't believe, right? But the kind of pull that like high pull, high pull, high pull, high pull thing, and saying that like, but they bang it off their thighs real low, and it's really just like there's not much force. Like there's not force and power, right? There's just like movement, body movement. So it's like instead of that long pull, like we want that long pull that creates, we're making the implement go, right? That's the thing. We like not just like my limb needs to feel fast, like the implement needs to go fast, right? So I think that there's, good technique leads to like this higher power outputs. They lead to the higher bar speeds, the stuff that we're actually after.
So bringing it back to like actual like day-to-day programming for your athlete, like what does that look like? Like what are you giving your athlete? Like what's their cutoff point? I think COVID would be an awesome like time to talk, like what were you giving them? Or is it just like, hey, do 70% and then let me know your speed right away? Or was it like, hey, you keep adding weight until you're below this weight? Or like, and how are you picking those numbers to give them the cutoff? Is it like a velo drop? Like what's that look like
Yeah,
again?
yeah, yeah.
How are you programming that?
So with the program that's actually in the book is one that I was giving to a couple of those athletes that worked really well, which was basically these like MVTs, and you were going to be like a certain percentage above that MVT, right? It was like 0.15 above it, 0.10 as you like went across a 4 week block, which kind of correlated to like going heavier each week until you hit like something that was at your MVT, and that would be in the lifts, and then in the like squats and pulls and stuff like squats in particular, anything like that. One thing that we have changed in the last few years is we do like I call it like a Lasha pull, so it's a low pull because I've turned like pulls into a very strength bias thing because I think that they don't like affect they don't help technique enough to be like if they're at 105% or 110%, which is classically programmed, and then so my pulls are super heavy. So pulls and squats are at those general like zero point 0.5, zero point 0.4, zero point 0.35, zero point 0.3 kind of like markers, 5 rep max at this, 4 rep max at whatever, right? Going through. So we do that. With my strength stuff now, we do a ton of velocity drop off, right? Like set drop off, minus 10%, minus 20%, like cut the set off kind of stuff. And depending on the phase, I think there was a cool study where it was like if you stay above like 20% set drop off in your mean velocity, you both get all of the power and strength benefits, but also all of the hypertrophy benefits, right? So like we'll cut that off at 20, like unlimited number of reps, right? Like reps until you get 20% like speed drop off in the set, like and that's one of the cool things. One of my favorite things that I come back to in the book is I have a chart that is like all the different ways you can plug in the variable of speed, right? Like it can be like pick a weight, as many reps as possible until you like have 20% velocity drop off, as many reps as possible above this speed. You can do as many sets of 8 as possible above, with before you hit a drop off and all that kind of stuff. But the lifts are still the same thing. We take those MVTs, and then that are unique to athletes, probably based on height, but you're probably going to need to dial them in, and then stay a certain percentage above them based on the week, until we have like kind of more of a max out week, and then we go to like actually hit the like that bottom threshold and see if it's where it is.
And that's interesting that you talked about the polls there, because it's like I've been running a little bit of an experiment of trying. So the goal is to clean 405. So I've been trying to use 405 and like banded variations of 405 to like get 405, almost like a math equation. Like if I can get 405 to pull, and then there's the technical piece, and you have to get underneath it and you have to squat it back up. But I'm like the bare minimum of getting 405 above my minimum velocity threshold. But you're talking about using it almost as use your average velos for your
so
instead?
I've turned poles into like just a super strength bias thing.
Yeah.
So like I have a 70 kilo male lifter who clean and jerks 160 kilos, but he'll do like his clean pulls with like 205 or 210 kilos for like sets of 3 or something like that. So it's just like this very heavy thing, and we could keep it in the normal strength zones. I don't remember if I got this in the book or if this is something I did after, but the only pole that could equate the speeds of lifts was like a hand release pole. Did I put that in there?
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, yeah. So like this, the idea is like poles can't the moment of peak velocity kind of occurs in the like weightless phase of a lift, right? So if you do just pulls, like even if like you can't equate the velocity because you are terminating the lift by not letting it like fly, basically.
I've
right?
been trying to do the throws, like literally.
Yeah, you're taught. Yeah, like
it as high as
I call it like
can.
a hand release pull. Like you pull it up and just let go, and it hits the crash pads or whatever.
Yep.
And you can equate the velocity with that. But yeah, I think that what you're saying with that. I think that's a great way to go about it. I mean, you could go do that. I would also potentially, like turn your pulls into for a period of time. You could turn them into something really, really heavy. We've had tons of luck with that, like because everything feels light forever. Then it's like. And my pulls are trying to be the opposite of squats, like, if you can squat it for 3, you better pull it for 3. If you can squat it for 5, you better pull it for 5,
Dude, you were the first person first Olympic coach that has told me, like in my head, it makes sense. It's like, if this feels heavy as shit off the ground, if I get my pull up, it's going to feel lighter off the ground. But everybody's been telling me it's like, that doesn't work. It's like too far away from your pull of what a clean looks like and too far away what your
Yeah,
snatch
we
looks
do.
like.
We do this thing. I call it a Lasha pull. So like if I've gone to international training halls, so like since I wrote the book, the development in my life is I've like gotten so far into weightlifting. I was the coach for the U.S. team at 2024 Paris, and lead up to that, I was like I've been at world championships, junior world championships, all this kind of stuff, and like China will. One of the things they do is they pull really, really heavy. Like I saw Li Wenwen, who's this amazing super heavyweight female. She like did a 210 kilo snatch pull, right? But it's like it's this style. I think Greg Everett in Catalyst calls it a short pull, but I just named it a Lasha pull because Lasha was the first guy I saw do it. And it's like a pull, but you stay over, right? Like it's not a deadlift, right? Because I think deadlifts don't work, right? Because deadlifts inherently you're supposed to pull your shoulders behind the bar, and if you rewind what we said a few minutes ago, I said never get your shoulders behind the bar until the bar is like weightless, right? So we don't want to practice that when our feet are still on the ground. So it's like a pull, and you finish with your legs kind of straight, like you're finishing, and my shoulders just like in front of the bar just a little. And so we call that a Lasha pull, and we just like we go. So I might be different than this, but I think it's starting to catch on because we have some of the strongest lifters. Like it's like we go so heavy. Like I want you to like do stupid. As long as your back stays flat, like we're going, right?
Is
We're
there a
gonna do it.
percentage where it turns from a deadlift to a pull to you, or is it just like
No, if you can
technique?
finish with your shoulders over and your legs straight, like maybe with a like tiny little shrug, it still counts, right?
Cool,
Like
cool.
to me.
Yeah, that's
So like
awesome.
we're flying. If you look it up, like look up Lasha pull. I made a video on it on YouTube. But the other result that you'll get is like you'll actually there's a YouTube short of Lasha doing pulls, and he's doing like clean pulls with like 320 kilos, and he like cleans 260 and he does these Lasha pulls. And that's what I want it to look like. Legs finished, feet flat, shoulders like kind of give a little shrug and then back down. And it's like, we do those all the time. That's, if we squat 2 times a week, we're doing those 2 times a week,
Dude, hell yeah. That helps gives me a little confirmation in this pro thing I've been thinking, because I've had a lot of people on and they just like, they shit on them. And I was like, it doesn't make sense to me. Why am I, maybe they're just really good pullers and really bad squatters, and that's why they emphasize the squat so much. And I'm opposite, so maybe it's like an individual bias or something. It's like, because if I can get underneath something, it's coming up. Like I can squat way more than the pull. So I was like, it doesn't make sense. And then I was watching all these dudes doing the pulls at ridiculous weights, and I was like, I get they're really strong, but they also are not clean and jerking that. So it's like it's definitely heavy. So thank you for that.
No problem.
I needed that a little bit. Last question of the podcast before I get you out of here. Is there an error? You were talked about the way that you program VBT is like 0.15 or 0.10 above VBT. Is there an error in doing it in the percentage-based way of your minimum velocity threshold? Is there something that you can see going on there, or is it just like that is a good
I just did it that way because I thought it was easier. I actually tried to write it with like a percentage of that thing, like 110% or whatever. And people were like having a hard time doing the math. So,
okay, that's okay.
Yeah, like they're like, well, wait, which way am I supposed to go? Am I supposed to go like, well, the weight is 110%? No. The speed is 110% of your best or whatever. So yeah, no. So I just put it into numbers, at like hard numbers to make it kind of easier to read. But yes, you're totally right to do a percentage above, or 110% of your best speed or whatever, 115% or whatever.
Awesome. Dude, this you answered all the questions that I had on this VBT. This is really cool. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day. What's the got any other books coming out? You got any things coming out?
No, I mean, I wrote my most recent thing. I wrote a book on sports psychology for like barbell athletes, weightlifters, but like barbell athletes. I'm getting my master's degree in sports psychology right now, and it's just like like mental skills and how to do the things and all that kind of stuff. Like to me, at high performing levels, like there is like this huge mental component to it. And so I just wanted to address that because, I think people are starting to talk, we're talking more sports science. We're talking, like good training's more out there. And now we're talking more sports science. And then there's people talking nutrition. And I just think that there's like there's not enough information on that. And so I thought the weightlifting community, people in the, gym, it's sports psychology generalized for all athletes could use it. But just like how to get those skills preemptively, not wait till like, I'm melting down. Like, but what are the preemptive skills? How do I visualize? How do I use imagery? How do I, create better routines? How do I focus in the gym? How do I do all this kind of stuff? So that came out, that's called Strong Mind, and that came out in the fall. And so, yeah, those are my two right now that I'm got. And yeah, it's just fun, just coaching, man.
Yeah, dude, I've been thinking about like, Ole's are super fun for me because I'm not competing. So it's like if I miss the weight, I can go miss it 5 more times and then go get it.
Yeah,
I think
whatever.
of the pressure. And it's like the difference between throwing a hammer in practice versus at a meet.
Yeah,
but at
for
a meet,
sure.
even at a meet, you get 6 throws if you make
6
finals.
throws, yeah.
Like at the Olympic lifting meet, you get 3. Like
Yeah.
if you, bro, like I cannot imagine the pressure some of these guys face if you miss
It's
the first
crazy.
lift or your second
Yeah, it's like
lift.
super binary too. It's like good or bad, right? And like, but the other thing, the cool thing about weightlifting, the cool thing about lifting, but also the hard thing is like, if you're better than you were yesterday. Like, yesterday, like in air quotes, like there's always a comparison. Like it can build you up or it could tear you down. Like that's why, if we circle this back to velocity, that's why like having another variable than the weight is really helpful, right? Like, I didn't hit that max number, but I hit the number before the max number faster than I have before. That's improvement, right? So if I have another variable, I can improve in multiple different ways. So yeah, anyways, I say weightlifting is like a very confronting sport, right? It's like, how good are you? And throwing is the same way, man. I was like, I'm not as good as I was last week, or whatever, hopefully you don't get in that trap, that like there's ups and downs, but sometimes you can, right?
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come and do this with me. Thank you for coming on.
No problem, man.
Thank you guys for listening. Keep chopping wood.
Thank you for listening. Join us next week as we dive down another rabbit hole. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a 5-star rating. Follow us on Instagram at Austin Yoakum to stay updated on future podcast guests. Keep chopping wood.